Today we will have a look at most likely the most famous play of them all. The one where the tragedy is felt throughout millennia, shocking and hurting all the same. We will have a look at Sophocles, the last of the great tragedians I haven't covered yet. There isn't much you need to know before the play starts. Oedipus was a newcomer into the city of Thebes. Being a prince of Corinth, he became the king of Thebes thanks to the fact that he saved the city before Sphinx, a monster with a human face, by answering her riddle. But that's all in the past. Let's see what the play has to say. King Oedipus. The city of Thebes was in peril. There was plague going through the streets, and the people were desperate, begging their king, King Oedipus, to save them. It has been years since he has slain the Sphinx and became king, and now misfortune came upon the town again. Now, at the steps of his palace, people begged for him to save the city again. Oedipus couldn't do much apart from the fact that he sent Creon, a brother of his wife Jocasta, to go to Delphi and consult the Pythia. Her god will know the answer. As Oedipus talked to a priest in the crowd, Creon has arrived with news. He speaks in front of the crowd. They now know what has to be done. There has been a terrible crime unpunished for years, the sin of it growing darker and darker every day. The oracle has told that the plague will go away when a murderer of King Laius will be found. King Laius, who was the previous king and husband of Jocasta. Oedipus immediately gets to work. What do people know? Where was he killed? Is there someone who survived the attack? There was only one person who survived it, speaking of multiple attackers on the road back in the day. But after that, the man requested to live away as a shepherd, never to be talked to again. The murder investigation never really went further due to the Sphinx settling nearby the city, and now Oedipus wanted to start anew. He will have the name of the murderer soon enough. Leaving the people of Thebes, Oedipus goes into his palace while the people rejoice. Finally, there is hope ahead of them. Later on, Oedipus speaks to the people again. If anybody is or knows the whereabouts of the murderer of Laius, please speak now, he calls into the crowd. But the crowd stays silent. Again and again he tried to lure the murderer out, to no avail. At last Oedipus cries out a curse. The murderer is forbidden shelter and congress with any man. They shall be expelled from every house, unclean. They may join no rites, excommunicated from them all. This curse goes out to all, including Oedipus himself if he unknowingly hid the murderer in his palace. But for now, nobody can point to the murderer other than the gods, and it is in no mortal's power to compel the gods to speak. But, the Thebans called out, there might be one person that knows the will of the gods the most. None other than our well-known Tiresias, the prophet that lived for far too long. Oedipus has already called for the prophet as they awaited his arrival. Tiresias came in, led by an attendant as he was blind. The prophet didn't seem too happy to be there. In fact, Tiresias begged Oedipus to let him leave. For the sake of all, he didn't want to speak. And no matter how angry the king got, Tiresias kept dodging the questions. But at last Oedipus blamed him. He thought the prophet may have had a hand in the murder of Laius. Tiresias looks with his blind look upon the king, angry. He did this to himself. You are the one you seek, Oedipus, he calls out. The killer is you. You live in the ignorance of what you did. But Oedipus doesn't listen to the prophet. Didn't he say that he was the hand of Apollo? And who just so coincidentally returned from the oracle of Apollo in Delphi? Creon. Creon must have been behind all of this. And this blind freak was his little helper. Tiresias is having none of what Oedipus is proposing. He mocks him for his blindness? Just he waits. He is his own worst nightmare. And with that, led by an attendant, the prophet leaves the palace. Later on, Creon heard of the accusation Oedipus threw on him. He, wanting to dispose of the king via Tiresias? Did the world go crazy? Why would he exchange his quiet life of luxury for the burden of kingship? If Oedipus wants to know if the prophecy Creon brought is true, he should leave for Delphi at once and ask the oracle himself. Oedipus still doesn't believe him, and Creon hates all the accusations, and as the men bicker, Jocasta enters the room and settles the disaster. Creon leaves with Oedipus still fuming, not believing a single word that comes out from his mouth. Jocasta and Oedipus talk, sitting down as the king calms down. He explains the situation to his wife, the prophecy, and the prophet talks of him being the murderer of Laius. Jocasta held his hand. "The prophecies don't mean much," she said. "We got a prophecy that Laius would be killed by his own son, and see? It was a pack of robbers who killed him in the place where the three roads meet. And the kid? It wasn't even 3 days old when they casted it out, tied by his ankles." At this, Oedipus freezes. Back all those years ago, he did kill someone. Someone at the place where 3 roads meet. Oedipus asked Jocasta for more details. How did Laius look? By how many people was he attended? By every question answered, he was sure more and more frightened by what was happening. Only one person survived the attack, one that begged to become a shepherd far away, as soon as Oedipus became king. He was called for at once. The king needed answers. The king hoped for a different end. Sitting next to each other, Oedipus shared more. When he was younger, still in Corinth, he was at a bar late at night, and one of the men there, who had obviously had too much to drink, approached him and told him that he wasn't the son of his father. And even though Oedipus tried to ignore it, even after his parents confirmed that they are indeed his parents when he asked, he needed to know more. So he left to go ask the oracle. The oracle brought him no relief, for her prophecy was that Oedipus shall kill his father, marry his mother, and have kids with her. So the very same day, Oedipus ran away from Corinth, determined to never return until his parents pass away. On the way from Corinth, where 3 roads meet, he met a man in a carriage who was extremely rude to him, and it so happened that Oedipus killed the man who looked exactly the same as Jocasta described. Was he the murderer of Laius? Jocasta calms him. Let's not assume and wait for the witness, the shepherd. She knew that he said it was robbers, plural, not a single man. And besides, the prophecy spoke of her son, who died on Mount Kithairon as a baby. They go to sleep together, hoping for a better tomorrow when they will know their answers. In the morning, Jocasta is praying when a messenger from Corinth enters the house. They sent for Oedipus to share the message. King Polybus of Corinth, the father of Oedipus, has passed away, in peace in his sleep. He wasn't killed by his son, and now the people of Corinth await their new king. Oedipus rejoices. The prophecy was wrong. He didn't kill his father. Him and Jocasta hug. But there was still Merope, his mother. He couldn't return to Corinth while she still lived. At this, the messenger questions, and the pair tells him of the sick prophecy. The man smiles with relief. "Well," he says, "I have some good news for you, because Polybus and Merope weren't your kin." The silence after is deafening. The messenger explains. Oedipus was found at the foothills of Mount Kithairon, tied together by his ankles. The shepherd who found him gave him to the messenger, who then gave him to the king and queen of Corinth. Who was this shepherd? Oedipus asks. Jocasta just stood there, white with terror. She begs Oedipus to stop looking for answers. Please, he has to give up this quest now. She has suffered enough. But Oedipus ignored her pleas, and she left, never to speak to the king again. The shepherd turned out to be the same that Oedipus already called for. He was ready to learn the truth, no matter what it was. If he was born a low origin, so be it. To a nymph on Mount Kithairon, so be it. Later, an elderly shepherd arrives in front of the king. The Corinthian messenger looked at him and confirmed. This was the shepherd that gave him the baby all those years ago. "Did you see this man before?" asked Oedipus, pointing at the messenger. The shepherd wasn't sure at first, but then you could see the terror enter his eyes when he was asked about a certain baby. "Here is the baby boy," calls the messenger, pointing at Oedipus. The shepherd is terrified, dodging every question the king asked, but at last, under death threats, he answers. "Whose baby was it?" "You should ask your wife. She will know the answer. Because it was hers. Oedipus was her baby son." At last, the king screams, panics, and throws everyone outside of the room, of the palace. The truth of what has happened finally settled on him. Later, the queen is discovered. Jocasta has realized sooner than her husband on what had happened, and took her own life in their bedroom. Oedipus is still in the palace, his mind tortured, begging his attendants to let him out. "Let Thebes see the wretched king," he calls out. And at last, Oedipus stumbles into the plaza, blinded. He did it to himself. Driven by the prophecies of Apollo, he pierced his eyes with the hairpin that Jocasta had in her hair. Why see the world when there is only ugliness? How could he look into the eyes of his father after he himself passes away to Hades? No, this had to happen. Oedipus begged to be touched, to be led away by someone, away from Thebes, but none would touch him. At last, Creon comes into the plaza as well. He doesn't scoff at what has happened, doesn't flinch when Oedipus begs him to lead him away. "Not yet," he said. "I await instructions from God." There was one more thing Oedipus begged for, his kids. The boys were strong, they could fend for themselves, but his daughters, he just wanted to hold them one more time. And at that request, the king heard sobbing. His daughters were already there. Oedipus hugged his beloved and begged Creon to take care of them after he is gone, after he sends him away. Creon will, once the god wills it, but for now the children are taken away from Oedipus as he is led further into the palace against his will, because he can no longer command, he can only obey. And that's where the play ends. I always felt incredible sorrow for the whole family. They didn't choose this. Neither Oedipus or Jocasta could have known. Later on, Oedipus is led outside of his city, accompanied by one of his daughters, Antigone. But that story is for a different time. Thank you for watching, please subscribe, and bye bye!